Rainy day here, Phoenix, Arizona. It's interesting. On my way in to the office today, my Bluetooth wasn't working on my stereo inside of my truck, so it forced me to kind of dig into something that I knew I wouldn't want to flip through. I don't know about you, but when I drive around, I find myself listening to like 30 seconds of a song, then switching to the next song. I think that really underscores the lack of attention span that most humans have now in the modern era, thanks to these devices, thanks to a lot of things, but it's just an evolution, I guess, of our attention spans. But as I was driving into the office today, I was kind of looking at bus stops, and I noticed something out here in Phoenix. You probably notice it in most metropolitan You probably notice it in most metropolitan areas. The benches at the bus stops, they have that bar in the middle to prevent homeless people from sleeping on the benches. And it kind of underscores this thought that I had coming in, because what it was is my Bluetooth was not working, so rather than putting on music that I subconsciously would want to change and go to the next thing, I decided to listen to Ram Dass on the way in. And if you don't know who Ram Dass is, he's one of the forefathers of LSD. Timothy Leary changed his entire life. But what you'll notice is at these bus stops, oftentimes you'll see these bars on the benches, and the bars are put there to prevent homeless people from sleeping on the benches. And that started making me think, why are there so many homeless people? How do you fix that problem? You know, our brains, we like to think about problems. I'm pretty analytical, as you can see. Video SEO Club. I literally get paid to analyze things, analyze why things happen. So I was thinking about homelessness on the way in. If you look around on YouTube, homelessness is on the rise. But what I did notice is more people out there kind of apprehensive about talking about those things. Let me get to the point. I believe that there was a marked increase of homelessness as individualism took flight in the United States. I would say that after the Great Depression, individuality became a focal point, especially in what do they call the greatest generation here in the United States after World War II. And the standard of living for the middle class shot upwards. Seen a lot of individualism. It was promoted, you know. Collectivism kind of fell to the wayside. And I think that a lot of times in society, collectivism is something that gets ramped up when there's like shared misery, shared trauma. And that's kind of what we saw with the Great Depression. So things in this country are very collective at that point. And you go into World War II and more collectivism, so many lives were lost. But it seems like somewhere around the 1970s, individualism became the go-to for most Americans, most people in the Western society, I would say. And how does this tie into YouTube? How does this tie into making your channel successful? I would say most people have a very individual outlook on content creation, especially when they're first starting, even myself included. You create the things that you like rather than creating the things that your audience wants. And that doesn't mean to chase trends. You should be going after things that speak to your soul, things that you're genuinely interested in. But a lot of people make content just for the sake of making content. That could be chasing a trend, trying to make the content that you think people want. A lot of times you're making the content that amuses you, that you find funny. Well, the good thing about the internet is if people aren't watching your content, there's any variety of reasons why that happens. In my career, I'm paid because I could usually figure out why that happens by studying the analytical data, even if there's lack thereof. So, while I usually talk about search engine optimization on this channel, there's any variety of things in the actual structure of the content that could be holding you back as a creator. And what I've noticed is a lot of times people aren't open to constructive criticism because they are creating that content for themselves. I would include myself in that. Once I started making content that I thought resonated with people or things that people would find interesting on Video SEO Club, I noticed a shift. Quite a few people started watching. And because of that, this channel has seen a lot of growth, in the last 6 months or so, which is good. But I don't create the content for me. I create informative content for people that want to win on YouTube, want to understand why they might not be winning in YouTube. Because it's very individual. When you're a creator, that's where the starving artist comes from. A lot of people, you hear about the starving artist. A lot of times, artists are starving because they're creating the art they want for themselves, and that's fine if it's a hobby. But if you're trying to monetize your art, which is really what YouTube is, it's art. It's people's artistic expression. So when you're trying to monetize that, it does require having an actual audience that's interested in what you're doing. If they're not interested, you know right away, because nobody watches, nobody comments, nobody subscribes. And that's one of those things that you'll see on a lot of YouTube videos. People start the whole video with, hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. I mean, you haven't even provided any value yet. That's not something I would suggest people lead with. So what does content collectivism mean? It means you're creating content for the collective, not for the individual. If you're creating content for people, not yourself, you're gonna get a whole lot more interest, a whole lot more engagement. You'll probably build a community for yourself on the platform, which really is what this is all about. But if you lead with individualism in your content, I just don't see how that's sustainable long term. And it's nothing I really thought of until that ride in this morning to the office. It's not something I really considered. But the vast majority of the YouTube channels where I create content, that's a very collective approach. Usually we're providing information about goods or services, mainly services, that could be beneficial to people. But it's not about the individuals providing those services. It's about touching the lives of those who could benefit from them. And that's just an observation I've made. So when you do create content, you have to excuse my winded breath walking up this hill here in Phoenix. When you are creating content, I recommend you do so for people, for your viewers. And that doesn't mean you should be making content you don't like. But think about it. I had a guy tell me the other day, I was in a business meeting with somebody, and he had a failed business. And I had worked with him on that, and he was kind of talking about what went wrong with it. And he said, well, the main problem with that business was it wasn't a product that I would use. So if you're going to go into business, make sure you're selling something that you personally would use. And if you're going to make content, make sure you're making videos that you personally would watch. And that doesn't mean it has to be so hyper personalized. Think about it like this. If you are passionate about baseball, you're passionate about the New York Yankees, okay, go to YouTube, see what content exists for the Yankees. And they used to talk about it on this show that was called Collectors FX. They used to call collectibles. They'd call something a cross collectible, okay? So let's say you had a Coca-Cola bottle and it had something about the 1992 New York Yankees on that Coca-Cola bottle. On FX, they would call that a cross collectible because you're crossing into two niches, right? So if you're creating content, you got to look at all these niches, and the more niches you can hit that you can speak to authentically and passionately, the more successful you're going to be long term. But that's collectivism. You're thinking about everyone on YouTube. You're thinking about these little niches. And you always hear the phrase, you can't please everybody. You can't engage everybody either. But you'll find your audience if you provide an authentic voice. But if your voice is inauthentic on the platform, you probably find no success. It always perplexes me. I used to see some YouTube channels where videos would have 0 views. And you know, it's such a big platform, billions of people on here, right? Watching videos around the clock. How could you really only get 1 view on a video? You almost have to work hard to try to get only 1 view. Or even worse, no views on a video. Now, I'm not saying that to be insulting or not trying to make fun of it. It's just what you'll notice is there's usually something wrong with that content. Usually it's just structurally wrong, the SEO is wrong, or it's content that no one cares about except for that person who created it. And what does that content look like when it's individual, hyper individualized? That content usually looks like people trying to sell things, right? Trying to sell a book or a movie. People trying to sell coaching. Could be anything, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying to make a couple dollars on YouTube. That's what we're here for. But what I noticed is when you lead with that, similar to when you lead with please like and subscribe to my channel, it's not beneficial to the viewer, so why would they stick around? We've been inundated all of our lives with commercials. I mean, nobody likes a commercial. That's why Netflix is so good, but now even they're putting commercials in, right? So if you make your YouTube content perpetual commercial for whatever you're trying to offer to monetize, that's not a good strategy for growth, especially if you're just starting out. And that might sound hypocritical compared to some of my comments, especially in some of my YouTube assessments. Yeah, there's a place for monetization. There's a place for providing offers that you think your audience would be interested in. Not saying not to do that, but there's a time and a place for it, you know? I mean, if you were going to ask somebody out on a date, you wouldn't propose marriage to them within the first few sentences of meeting them, right? That's how it is on YouTube. Literally, you'll see these YouTube videos start up. Someone says, hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't even know you yet, and you want me to like and subscribe to your channel? It's a big ask, right? Our attention is something that we give away freely, but as far as our allegiance through subscribing to channels, we're very protective of that, aren't we? Yeah, I don't subscribe to a lot of channels either. I know where the content is, I know where to find it. So if you're making YouTube videos, I wouldn't suggest leading with the ask. Don't lead with like or subscribe. Make the content for the platform. Find your niche. And what does that actually mean, right? You hear everyone say that. I remember when I started on YouTube, you hear guys say, or women, find your niche, find your audience. They don't necessarily tell you how to do that. What I suggest is, if you're passionate about something, cooking, exercise, cars, anything, right? Research the things you're passionate about. See how other people are already showing up on YouTube. And then consider what you can provide to that conversation with your own unique perspective. But the number one thing when you're looking for your audience and your niche and all that is you want to make sure it comes from a place of authenticity. You don't want to just be chasing trends, right? There's no fruit in that. And you're going to hate making content if you're not actually passionate about the content. I enjoy talking about this stuff. And since I'm actually walking around out here, I figure I'll talk about it. Yes, it is a nice day for a walk in Phoenix. It's beautiful day here. That's Squaw Peak Mountain, Piesta Peak. Yeah, it's a beautiful day for a walk out here. And it's always a beautiful day if you look at it from that perspective. I've drastically reduced my caffeine intake, and it's got me a little bit more present with my thoughts, especially driving. Wasn't a lot of traffic in Phoenix today, so I could actually think rather than be in fight or flight for the entire ride into the office. Vegas is beautiful. Yeah, Vegas is usually a little cooler than Phoenix in the summertime there. I see that. Yeah, I love Vegas, actually. Can't wait to go back up there. But what's it like living in Vegas? Do you like living there? I know there's no income tax for state income tax in Vegas. But yeah, I'm not sure if people actually like living in Vegas. What's it like for you? I love it up there, actually. It's not a far ride from Phoenix. Shoot up the highway about 4 hours. You're in the bright lights, the glitz and glamour of Las Vegas. It's beautiful. But yeah, I would say if you're going to start a YouTube channel today, the main important thing to do is start. So many people say, I want to do this, I want to do that. That's true. I'm not a fan of living here. I'm originally from NYC. Vegas is pretty boring to me. Nice place to visit though, especially if you just visit the Strip. It's interesting because when I go up to Vegas, I like to go Fremont Street. That's where I like to go. I don't do a lot of gambling, but when I go up there, I'll go down to Fremont Street. I like the Circa, the new casino and hotel that they have down there. I don't mind playing roulette a little bit, but if I lose more than $30, I start to think about things I could have spent the money on. So, but yeah, I do like Fremont Street up there. And the Strip, yeah, the Strip is beautiful, obviously, but a little more expensive for my blood up there. But I've stayed on the Strip. Vegas as YouTube, right? There was quite a few people that have been successful with Vegas channels on YouTube. I remember there was a lot of mafia stuff was successful on YouTube talking about Vegas. There was a guy named Frank Culotta who had a channel on YouTube called Coffee with Culotta, where he kind of told a lot of the backstories, because what he was actually one of the guys who lived through the true story of Casino. So if you've seen the Martin Scorsese movie with Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro, James Woods, Sharon Stone, Culotta was one of the consultants on there, and he had a YouTube channel. He unfortunately passed away. I believe he had cancer, but he was based in Vegas. There's a lot of different angles you could do on YouTube with Vegas. You have betting channels if you're into sports betting, obviously gambling. There's that guy, his name's Mickey Mace. He's pretty big. He's actually banned from 96% of the casinos in the world. He's popped up on YouTube. He did one with Soft White Underbelly, and he did some really interesting interviews about how he kind of devised some ways to legally beat the casinos. And it's interesting hearing his perspective, because it turns out people really don't like you to win, even if you're doing it legally. What's that there? Casino is a nice movie. The Irishman kind of links to that movie, too. A great movie. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Scorsese films. The Irishman, I liked it. It was a little bit too long for me, but I felt like they could have ended it a little bit earlier. But it could be the context. I was kind of back in the days when I would be working on YouTube endlessly, and I was probably on like 4 hours of sleep when I went to go see it. Definitely not the movie to go see if you're not well rested, but I agree, both are good films. And I like The Irishman because it kind of gives you a perspective of what life is like if you outlive all the other guys in the mob, because you see De Niro at the old folks home and kind of what he's going through there, which is something we've never really seen put into a mafia movie. So pretty interesting. I'm glad you watched the live today. It's great talking to you. Vegas is a good time, right? I don't really drink, and like I said, I don't enjoy gambling too much, so but I do love all the buildings up there. You walk around and see all the characters on the Strip. It's a good time up there. But hey, I got to get back in. My break's over. It's a beautiful day here in Phoenix. Remember, when you're creating on YouTube, create for the collective. Thanks for watching.